So at the end of the last episode, we said in our next check-in, we'd either be 40 weeks pregnant or we'd have a baby. And Fatima, what are you?
What am I?
Are you 40 weeks pregnant?
No, thank God. I'm currently in what they call the 4th trimester. And
Trimester
almost,
is 3.
Yeah, I know, right? It bothers me so much. But I'm 7 weeks postpartum. So, yay. We have, I guess, almost, right? It would be this Friday.
Yeah.
So just like a few days short of that. So, yeah, we have a 7-week-old.
Which is crazy.
Yeah. And I made it to almost 40 weeks. I know that I think we were talking a little bit about what I would do if I was late, blah, blah, blah. Nope. I was almost exactly on time. Though my guess was I was going to give birth on that Thursday.
The 13th.
And I ended up giving birth on Friday. My mom's guess was that I was going to give birth on Saturday. So we split the difference and we were right in the middle as far as when I gave birth. So,
and I was way off because I was saying December 26th.
Yeah, you were he was for tax purposes. No. Seeing that we just completed our taxes too. For tax purposes, Brian was hoping that we had a 2021 baby, but no, he held off for 2022. So yeah. I think in the last week and a half of being pregnant, you could just sense that I just wanted this baby out of me. I would show up every day on our Zoom calls with my team and just be like, "Yep, still pregnant, still here," because I pretty much got them all ready and geared up to not have me back for the New Year's. Right? I was like, it's gonna come before I have to be back to work on the 4th, and nope. I came back, and then that whole week seemed really long, and then I pretty much made it to the end. I did make it to the end of the week. It was Friday, so I'm just like, you gotta be kidding me right now. I was like, even if I don't have this baby on my due date, I told them I'm not showing up on that Monday, so don't expect me to. But no, my body did what it was supposed to. I gave it a little bit of a nudge. I will admit, being home, working from home, the pandemic, being pregnant was different. I usually, even though my mom, my sisters, they all told me that I had 0 chill and I didn't know how to sit down. But I felt like that's all I was doing was I was sitting around meetings. I mean, yes, I would still clean and play with Liam and all the other good stuff. But as far as like walking, the way I walked when I was in the city, I'd be jumping from client to client. I had 3 clients. So I'd be jumping on the train, walking to the subway, and all this other stuff, right? Just running more and more errands and just walking more. Because even running errands, we jump in our car now. We don't go on the subway. You and I would walk all the time. Yeah. So I think I pretty much walked Liam out like early. I was like, I evicted him way earlier than what he needed to be. So in the last couple of days, my guess was that I was going to give birth on Thursday. When Wednesday turned around, it was nothing. And Thursday, there was nothing. I took 2 very long walks by myself. I left Brian and Liam here in the house, in the apartment. And I was like, you know what? Bye, guys. At around 4 o'clock, I even told my friend / boss, I was like, Jean, I need to walk this baby out. She's like, go. Like, do what you need to do. So I would go at like 4 o'clock and just walk and make loops around this park that's right across the street from us. And I walked, and I would even start to feel like, oh, my body responding to it. I was like, okay, good. I'm going to walk one more lap to make sure. And I would come back. And so I thought for sure when I did that on Wednesday, I was like, Thursday, this is going to happen. And then when I got to the end of the day of Thursday, I was like, you know what? At this point, I'm hoping I don't want to give birth in the middle of the night. So I'm just hoping that it's the next day. Sure enough, I woke up that morning. We were supposed to get on the train.
Yeah, and we'll talk about that in the majority of the episode.
Okay.
Coming up.
I'm jumping ahead.
It's okay. But you're listening to Millennial and Pregnant. If you haven't heard about Anchor by Spotify, it's the easiest way to make a podcast with everything you need in one place. In fact, this season of Millennial and Pregnant was produced and hosted on Anchor. Here's what I love about it. Anchor has tools that allow you to record and edit your podcast right from your phone or computer. This made it easier for me to edit my episodes on the go. When hosting on Anchor, you can distribute your podcast on listening platforms like Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and more. It's everything you need to make a podcast in one place. And best of all, Anchor is totally free. Download the Anchor app or go to anchor.fm to get started. Well, now you can, let's finish our story.
I know I was rudely interrupted, but whatever. So that morning, I was 37 weeks last time.
Yep.
So
December 26th.
I would have just been short of starting to go to my like weekly appointments with my doctor, because right around that time you go every week. So I bypassed the annoyance of the late in the pregnancy where you see your doctor every week, where you apparently have to go for an ultrasound a few days before you give birth or your scheduled due date, and then your doctor might see you again, and then potentially some type of intervention where they might have to induce you or whatever. So I said a lot just to get there. Anyways, I had an ultrasound scheduled for the couple of days before my due date, just to check the growth, etc. So we're about to get on the train, or I woke up that morning, or
let's back up to Thursday.
Let's back up to Thursday, right? So I felt good. I was feeling like my body was getting somewhere, but then it kind of stopped, right?
Because of all the walking you've been doing in the last week.
Because I was walking.
Because a week before, or maybe 2 weeks before, you had been saying, you're like, just get this baby out of me. And we were looking at all the things that would help start labor. And one of those, at the top of the list, actually, was walking.
Yep.
And so we're like, just start walking more.
But we did do the spicy food.
Yeah.
And I don't know if there was anything else I think it was the spicy food and the walking that we really were like, okay, this is going to possibly work. And the walking makes sense to me, right? You're just trying to move your body a little bit. So
Thursday night,
like when I was going to sleep, or like, overnight, I started to feel, that feeling of, okay, my body, like, I think I mentioned it too in the last time. A lot of people are like, what does it feel like to go into labor? I was like, well, it feels like you're getting your period. Like, if you have a little bit of cramp, not like major cramping, because I want to make sure that, you go to your doctor if you're feeling like major cramping, but it's that other feeling, that other kind of pain that you're feeling when you have your period. And it's kind of weird because you're pregnant and you're like, okay, what's happening? Things you want to look out for that could be, obviously talk to your provider or whatever about this. But, if there's bleeding and stuff, like, that's serious. No, I was just feeling like, okay, like my body is doing something. It kind of feels like I'm almost getting my period, but I'm not. And it's not cramping. So I was feeling that throughout the entire night, and it would be on and off. So that was also the big indicator too. It wasn't like this constant pain. It would be there. So those were the start of the contractions, right? And then it would last for a little bit. The thing that you want to be really aware of is, is it lasting more than a minute, and how far apart it was. And so mine was all over the place. There wasn't any kind of intervals, and it lasts for like maybe 10 seconds or so. And then I would be like, okay, I'm fine. So that was like through the entire night that I was feeling that. So even with that being said, I thought, it could still be a couple days before anything actually happens. I saw no mucus plug. There was no other signs of labor. So I woke up the next morning and I'm getting ready. And now I'm pausing a little bit every time I'm brushing my teeth or I'm getting out of the shower. I'm like, whoa, okay, this pain is a little bit more, more intense. So I was like, I'm for sure these are contractions now. So
and watching you, it was towards the time we were about to leave, you were clearly in pain.
It progressed, like it went through the roof by the time before we walked out the door. And luckily my mom was here that day, just because we were going to the doctor's appointment. And she looked at me and she's like, you guys gonna take the train? Are you sure you want to take the train? I was like, I'm fine. I'm sitting down, I'm having breakfast. And I'm like, you know what? I think she saw me pause a few times, like making breakfast and sitting down and realizing like, okay, I'm trying to find the word. This is sleep deprivation.
Quicker.
It's closer together. Before, I had some time where you could breathe it out. You're like, you have some pain, but breathe it out. You can do this. Now it was just like constant. I poured my cereal, take a pause. I get the spoon, take a pause. Like I'm sitting down and I can't even really enjoy eating my cereal because I'm in just so much pain.
Yeah.
So that's when I went into the room and I was like, we're not taking the train.
Yeah.
We're driving. And
you're like, we need to drive.
You were worried about the traffic.
I was like,
at
oh
that
my
time,
God.
you're like, no, you're like, the traffic though. It's like, I really do think I'm in labor right now. So we're taking the car. So, I grabbed my bag, said goodbye to Liam. And it was just like, I know the next time I walk into this house, I'm going to have a baby. We jump in the car. Once again, on the way down to the elevator, get into the car. I'm breathing, taking pauses. We get into the car. We plug it in. It says it's going to take us like 35 to 40 minutes. So we're like, okay, this is what we were expecting. So we're driving there. And as we're in the car, it got even worse. Where I'm like holding onto the handrail, whatever that thing is by the car, when
the window.
What is that thing? The little latch thing.
It's like a hand.
Yeah, whatever it is. So
I don't know if that's to help people get into the car or to get out of the car, but it's up above the window where you like.
Even
I don't know. We used to hang like dry cleaning.
This is what happens when you don't sleep. We haven't slept. I'm drinking decaf coffee. What are we doing here? Anyways,
Are you even drinking coffee?
I'm drinking coffee. So we're driving there. I think even in our heads, we were still driving to the ultrasound.
Yes.
Until
no.
I said I was going to call my doctor and say I was on my way, potentially being checked before. I still thought he was just going to check me and I was still going to go to my ultrasound.
Yeah. I thought, mentally, I was driving to the hospital.
Oh, okay.
In actuality, we were driving to the ultrasound.
My doctor.
Or whatever, your doctor. And
my doctor was on the way to the ultrasound, so it worked out. Everything was within a few blocks, thank God.
Yeah.
Because if we were going in one direction or the other, no, we would have reached the hospital first, then my doctor, then the ultrasound place. So they all are within a few blocks, and that's kind of why I also decided to go with the same doctor that I went to. It's just everything just made sense. So as it's getting worse, I left before we left the apartment, I did call my doctor and left a message. I didn't really feel like it was urgent, and I knew he was going to be in the office in like an hour or so. So I was like, he's going to give me a call back then. So we're in the car, and he gives me a call, and I tell him, he's like, okay, well, stop here first. He's like, I just want to check you. Because if that would have happened, if I went to the hospital, he would have to come to the hospital and then check me to see what was going on. So he wanted to know kind of what we were working with. So now in our minds, like halfway through the trip, we're bypassing the hospital. We're going to my doctor's.
Yes. We're bypassing the ultrasound. It's not whatever to go to your doctor.
Yes. So we were just like, we were
Mentally,
all over the place.
I was going to the hospital.
I didn't know where you were. I knew where I was. I was like, I'm having this baby. I just hope I don't have it in the car.
I was so stressed because you were like, oh my God, the whole time. And I'm like, oh my God, I'm gonna be delivering this baby in the car because we're gonna be in traffic. I looked up how to deliver a baby on your own. I don't
said
even
that
know.
To me a couple of days before I went to labor. He's like, so I looked up how I would deliver a baby at home. I looked at him like he had 5 freaking heads. I was like, you are not delivering this baby. I hope you know that.
I'm like, we're driving. We were planning to drive anyways. We're going to hit traffic. What if it's rush hour? There's a really big area on one of the highways that's always under construction. That's a whole block up. I'm like, I'm going to have to deliver a baby in the middle of that construction. I need to know the basics. Obviously, you call the paramedics and 911 and they can walk you through it.
I would be like, do nothing.
That's step number 1. But then I'm like, hey, do we have blankets in the car? Do we have, like, what things am I going to need?
How are you going to cut the umbilical cord?
Yeah.
Did you have a scissor? Did you have scissors?
Ask me the steps now. I have no idea what to do.
I would know how to do more
so
than
stressed. And driving through the city makes me very anxious and stressed.
Yeah.
So I'm like,
there would be no way. No way. Me and my sister were saying, we're like, oh God, what is Brian going to have to do if he has to like really speed through? Because Brian is a very cautious driver. I'm a cautious driver, but I also know how to speed a little bit and like push through or be a little bit more aggressive. Just because my older sister taught me how to drive, and if you got in the car with her, you'll know. She's just she's a good driver. She's she doesn't really, she knows how to react and blah, blah. Anyways,
Yeah,
not going to.
She goes 100 miles an hour.
Yeah, no, she doesn't.
Okay, 95.
No. So anyways, we were worried about how you were going to get through that drive, but you did really good.
And we got to the doctor's office, and at his office, there was a parking space right in front of his office.
Literally like the angels from above.
Fifth Avenue, where angels
Seriously,
were looking out for me.
I honestly, like, something was going on that morning because just everything kind of just worked out. I got my contraction at the right time for us to know to get in the car. And even though there was some traffic and
we did tail end of rush hour.
Yeah, so it wasn't like super bad. Then we get the parking spot. I get in, my doctor immediately checks me. And ladies, just to warn you, when your doctor has to check you to see like how much you've progressed in your labor, and they're checking to see if your water broke, it is the most painful thing ever because they really have to go up there to really see and examine if your water has broken. So it's really up there. So he's checking me and I'm like, I'm having contractions, and then he's also checking me like, I was like, what is happening? Like, what is going on right now? So he checks me. What was I? 4 centimeters.
I think so. 3 or 4?
I was 4. No, I was. Oh, yes. I was 3 or 4 centimeters. There was always like 2 or 1 centimeters for like the past
leading
2
up
weeks.
to it,
Yeah, leading up to it.
Yep.
So he's like, okay, but still like not super, like doctors are not worried when you're 3 to 4 centimeters. They just are not. They're like, it's going to be a while, like in their heads. And in my head, I'm like, I know you delivered a lot of babies, and I've been going to this doctor for years now. I was like, do you not, and it's been 4 years since he delivered our son. So I was like, do you not remember how quickly I progressed last time? I don't think he really remembered, because he's like, okay, like you're only 3 to 4, but let's get you over it. Let's get you to bed immediately. Because apparently everyone and their mother, no pun intended, wanted to give birth on the day I gave birth.
Yep.
The maternity ward was at capacity. It was only 2 more beds left. My doctor called the hospital and said, I have my patients coming. I was 2 blocks from the hospital. She's walking there now. So like they started to set up the room for me. That was the reason why I even got the room, was because my doctor called immediately. So now we left the car where it was because it was in a good spot. Thank God we didn't have to double park.
It was right after street cleaning, so it was like
perfect.
I think there were 5 minutes left on street cleaning, but
you're like,
this is great.
Like, I'm gonna do
I
it.
can leave the car.
So we're walking now. We have to walk up 2 blocks to the hospital, and like every 2 seconds, I need to stop. People are probably looking at me like, "Girl, what's happening?"
He's like, your doctor was like, you need to get to the hospital now. But it's taking us a while because you're having labor pains.
Yes.
On the way to the hospital, we're not getting there in a good amount of time.
Stop. Like, what do you want me to jump on your back and like you carry me there? Anyways, and like of course I get a contraction while I'm crossing the street. I'm like, great. I'm gonna get hit by this car. I'm not like, I have to breathe this out. This taxi could wait. So, finally we get to the hospital. Like, you had to wait downstairs because of COVID protocol or whatever else. You had my purse, so I didn't have my insurance card or my ID. But I'm like, hello, my husband has it. A woman's in labor and she goes in the elevator. Like, I was like, my husband has it. So they got me into the room anyways. I'm like, idiots.
Meanwhile, Fatima walks up. She goes upstairs. 3 seconds later, 3 other women come in to give birth.
And only one other person.
One person was allowed upstairs, and they asked everyone else to leave. I don't know if they had a separate building set up, but they were directing everyone.
So you have to go to a different building.
You have to leave.
Yeah, it's to a different building. So,
wild.
They try to probably set it up to have everything that they need to give birth and stuff, but you're if like the person who needs to get the epidurals and stuff have to go to a different building, the chances that you might have to wait a little bit longer and stuff like that. Like, but I think they probably obviously set up some type of triage area or, set it up so it's comparable to the maternity ward. But
that's at how capacity it was.
Yeah.
Literally, like, honestly, 3 seconds later, like 3 people came in. I'm like, do you all know each other?
I'm curious to see. I want to look it up, like how many births happened on 1/14, maybe even specifically
or even like just mid-January.
or just, in the city, like if it was just like a city thing, if it was just like across the board. I just feel like there's a huge baby boom right now.
Yeah.
Maybe all the people who were waiting before because of the pandemic and the vaccine and stuff, and then they felt more.
Starting to feel like more normal in the
springtime.
springtime.
So they're like, okay, like let's have our baby. Anyways, so I got there in time. Last time my mom was there and was able to be there and help me through the labor along with Brian. You were there most of the time. Ladies, you want your mom there. But she couldn't be there this time because of, just one person in the room. So the nurse is like walking me to the room and I'm like, I'm talking to her. I'm getting to know her name. And she's like, I'm JJ. I was like, are you kidding me right now? It's like that. I was like, my mom, like that, that's one of her nicknames. So everything was just like a little bit of a sign, and it made me feel she was like the sweetest nurse ever. And she was actually new. She transferred from a different, so that other nurse who was kind of like with her, she was like letting her do everything, but making sure she was doing everything correctly. So, but she was great. I don't think that nurse really butted in at all. She was just observing her and making sure she was doing everything correctly. So I had a great nurse. I get set up, I'm waiting. I'm like, where's my husband? She's calling them down to make sure, like, she has a room, like, get him up here. So finally you come.
Because the security protocols, the upstairs has to call downstairs to this guy. I went up to him and I said, my wife got a room. Because he told us that we couldn't go up until they got a room. I'm like, she got a room. He's like, I didn't get a phone call. I'm like, they said they keep calling you and you're not picking up. He calls up. He's like, no, she doesn't have a room. I'm like, yes, she does. She has a room.
I'm texting her right now.
Yeah. I'm like, she's on the phone. So that was like the first time. Then the second time I went back up because then he left his desk, went for, I don't know where he went, then came back. And I'm like, they keep trying to call you. He's like, let me call up. And he's confused. Like nothing's like, they don't have your name. Something is weird. And then you finally called me on your phone.
Yeah.
And I'm like, can you
it takes it takes a minute for you to show up in the system. So if he was looking for something in the system, he's not there.
He's waiting for a phone call.
Yeah.
And whoever he was calling, I don't know who he was calling.
The nurse, JJ, she called while I was in the room.
Yeah. I think he was calling the front desk.
Okay.
And maybe the front desk or whatever. They didn't know. It was like, can you please let me up? Like,
yeah. So I'm like, where is my husband?
Like, I have an insurance card. I have paperwork I need to start filling out.
So you showed up. So I was
I
like,
have a wife in labor.
So I'm here by myself. Luckily, like the nurses at this hospital are just amazing. They're like, it solidified my in deciding to go back into the city and to give birth, and specifically at this hospital, and to keep my doctor was just my overall experience that I had. And she was great. So she was helping me breathe before you came up. I was all changed and everything, like lying in the bed. I'd already told them, my doctor already called over, I wanted the epidural. We weren't going to try. We were not going to try to be Superwoman. Not today. Last time I was trying to thug it out, and I was like, I'm not getting it. And then 8 to close to 9 centimeters in, I got it.
Yeah.
This time I said, I'm not waiting. Plus I knew that the floor was super packed. So I wasn't gonna get it as quickly as I got it last time.
Put in that order now.
No, yeah, I had to put that order in now. I got the order in before I even showed up to the hospital. And fast forward, because of maternity ward, and I'm one of the last people to get there. So I was gonna be one of the last people for the anesthesiologist, I guess is the person who does it.
Sure.
Epidural person, whoever. The epidural gods wasn't gonna get to me until towards the end, if they're going to go on a, you looking it up, epidural gods.
Radiologist or anesthesiologist?
Yep, anesthesiologist, what I thought.
You're right.
So, although they're not knocking you out, but it's numbing you. So, I'm changed, we're breathing through, Brian's finally up there, paperwork is filled out, anesthesiologist is still not there. Doctor hasn't even showed up yet. I think my doctor really was like, yo, she has a lot of time. But plus I wasn't super worried because he's literally 2 blocks down. So he's probably just like, okay, like let me finish. I have a couple more and a couple more patients, blah, blah, blah. Like she's going to be a little bit. She's only 4 centimeters dilated. He comes before this anesthesiologist came, right? I think.
Possibly.
Yeah, because I hadn't gotten it yet. I think I'm still in a lot of pain.
Oh, yep.
And he checks me. And your girl is 7 centimeters dilated. So here I am. So once again,
Meanwhile,
I've
this is all
labored.
within like an hour and a half, 2 hours of getting to the hospital.
Yeah. It was only like an hour and a half, maybe 2 hours. So finally, the anesthesiologist come probably right after my doctor had left and checked me, and I was 7 centimeters dilated. He gives it to me. Everything feels great. I feel great. I'm less pain. I'm like, I can get through this. Then what happened? My doctor, I think, came back and checked me again. I felt like my water had something happened.
We were waiting for your water to break because it hadn't broke yet. And then it finally broke.
Yeah, I felt like something happened. I was like, ooh, I think my water just broke. And so then they came and they checked me again, and it was like, yes, my water had broke. So it's like, it could be any minute now. Yeah. They were all just so calm. They're like, any minute now. I was like, okay, well, any minute now I'm going to be a mom of 2. Okay, this is going to happen. And so then I think maybe 15 minutes or a little bit after, I'm like, I feel like they're like, really call us back if you feel a lot of pressure down there. Like you need to use the bathroom, right? It's just like a lot of
big poop,
a lot of pressure. Yeah, I'm feeling a lot of pressure. So we buzzed them again, and they're like,
10
okay,
centimeters.
I think we're ready to push now.
Yep. This is all within now like 3.5 hours of arriving at the hospital.
Yep. So, my doctor was like, you remember how to push?
Last time we had this amazing, she was a nurse, but she worked as a midwife. And so she was there most of the time, and she was just helping breathing and guiding you. Yeah. And then your doctor, when he goes, do you remember this? You got this?
Because I'm like last time, because he probably doesn't remember. He didn't really talk me through it. It was Nurse Helen who had did it. Amazing. I asked all the nurses about Nurse Helen. She's like, yeah, she still works here, but she's on the day off. It's like, I love her. It's like, everyone loves her. She's just a magician. She's a magician with giving birth and like helping women latch their babies right after their birth. I was like, she's a magician. Like, where is she? JJ was just as good though. She was amazing.
Yeah, she was great. And so when your doctor said that, I just looked at him like, huh? Like...
And in my head, I'm like, right? I know this shouldn't be a funny moment, but I just wanted to laugh. I was like, yeah. I was like, it's like you're pooping. I think I kind of said something along those lines.
You're like, I need not a refresher, but you're like, can you just someone tell me?
Yeah. The most important thing is really timing it with like the contractions and stuff. So I really, sometimes because I'm kind of numb down there, I can kind of feel it, but I need someone to say, okay, contraction's coming, to be like, this is a bigger pain. Like that's when you want to push. So I think you had one leg, and the nurse had the other leg, and I'm pushing. The first time was not like, I guess nothing really happened. The second time was like, okay, like, and then I think I did it maybe 1 or 2 times after that, and then my doctor was like, okay. Then they broke down the bed because he's like, okay, stop pushing, because I guess was I crowning at that time?
Hanging out.
Baby was hanging out, so he's like, okay. He's like, don't push anymore. And so then they broke down the bed.
Such a dramatic scene.
It like happened so quickly.
It's like you're on Broadway. Yeah. It's like, except the lights are on.
I don't remember them breaking down the bed last time.
I don't
remember them breaking out. Maybe Helen got it ready. Maybe she had it ready before we even knew, because I don't remember that.
Because your doctor, like with Liam, he like ran in, like had to catch him.
Yes, so maybe they didn't have time to do it. That's exactly what happened. He came in. That's exactly what happened. Because I remember Helen took my hand. She grabbed my hand and she guided me down. And she's like, see that? She's like, feel that? That's his head. And I was like, oh, okay. And then they called the doctor in, and my doctor was like, he like threw his hands up. He's like, oh my goodness. And then my mom was helping him put his scrub thing on, protective gear thing, and like one more push and the baby was out. So, anyways, the doctor was there maybe 10 to 15 minutes more this time around. So anyways, they break the bed down. I do 1 or 2 final pushes.
You probably only did like 5 or 6 pushes total.
And he was out, and it was like crying, and they placed him on my chest, and we were parents to 2.
And all my anxiety left my body.
Yeah, it was just like, it's like I can't even describe
temporarily.
the feeling. Yeah, temporarily. It's just like relief. It's like, oh my goodness, I did that. And in your head, you're like, oh my God, I did that 2 times. Wow, I'm impressed with myself. So
you were amazing.
So my doctor was like, when he was leaving the room, he's like, well, I didn't really do anything.
I'm like, you didn't do anything last time.
I forget who it was, the nurse or someone. They were like, well, hopefully he remembers that when he sends the bill. And I laughed. I was like, yeah, true. He literally was like, I was here for maybe an hour to an hour and a half in the hospital, and then in the room for maybe 20 minutes. And then I was done.
Yeah.
But then obviously we gave, they had to give birth to the placenta and make sure everything was out. So, he's checking me and everything else. They're getting the baby cleaned up. But yeah, it was 4 hours of, I would guess being in the hospital. If you count the drive there in the morning of that, I would say I was really in labor for maybe 6 hours.
Maybe. Because we didn't get to the hospital until maybe 11.
Yeah. Yeah.
And he was born at 2 something.
Because I really don't count. I get, if you were to think about it overnight, you're like, oh, okay, count those hours. I really count it like to the point where I'm like, this is painful. That's when I'm like, okay, I'm in labor. I'm laboring, and I have to breathe through it. I have to, my mind has to be in the right place.
So like 7 or 8 o'clock in the morning until around 2:15.
Yeah, which is crazy. So yeah, I don't know if there's anything really to add with like.
No,
It was a pretty amazing experience.
I think because of the way Liam came so quickly, I was prepared for the quickness of it. So like I wasn't prepared to get to almost 40 weeks. I was more prepared for the actual
laboring.
quickness of his delivery this time around. So in my head, I'm also thinking, oh yeah, this is going to be pretty quickly but I know some people are in labor for.
And it's just like
really long time.
Every pregnancy, every labor and delivery, every child, it's also so different.
Yeah. Yep.
But I do agree. For some reason, I always thought the laboring part was going to be consistent.
Yeah.
Just how quickly my body just responded, and then how I was feeling that morning, and then in the car, and then at the hospital. I was like, for sure, it's going to be similar to what Liam's birth was, just because it just felt all the same ways it felt before. So I'm happy to have had and fortunate to have such a easy pregnancy and labor and delivery. Like that was top notch.
And do you think that your team and the hospital were part of that?
Yes.
Why it was so easy?
Yeah. So I always felt like my doctor listened to me. He listened to my concerns before, even when we thought we might have been late about not doing Pitocin and being induced. Like that was something that I didn't want to happen. I wanted my body to naturally get into it. Then being there and I just feel like everyone listened to you when you're there and giving you advice and you really felt like they cared about you and that you're not just some person that they wanted to get out of the room. From my nurse, just to everyone at the hospital. I think from even when we went up into the recovery, what is that floor called?
I want to call it the maternity ward, but I think that's wrong.
Anyways, the floor after after labor, the recovery area, the recovery floor.
It's labor and delivery, and then there's maternity.
Maybe. Anyways, people, you can look that up. Anyways, so after you get off of the floor where you're actually where you're delivering your child, and then the nurses that are there who are taking care of both of you and your baby, even that experience was amazing. We got put into our own room by, I don't even know, because last time I was in a room with someone else. So that was also nice to have my own space this time. And just everyone was just so caring, giving you advice. People, the lactation consultant coming by and talking you through everything. It was just, I felt like just that experience was great just because of the people that was there. And they have such a high rating for, less interventions and all that other good stuff. So like they're really, really good, a really good hospital. And I think that was why my experience was the way it was. I've heard, just horror stories where people are being turned away because they're said, you're not in labor. Like, and people are like, no, I am in labor, and people being sent home and stuff like that. Like, it could be a totally different experience where, my doctor's like, you're only 3 centimeters. Like, go home. Like, labor this all on your own. Like, you're fine. Whereas, like, that wasn't the case. Or being left in a room while you're, trying to breathe it out while your husband's downstairs and no one's there next to you. Like, that all can be such a traumatizing experience. And that was not something, like, my nurse did not leave me by myself until you essentially came there. And even then she was there constantly checking, seeing how the babies, because they monitor the baby when they're in there, making sure I wasn't in distress. The anesthesiologist came back even after I gave birth to check on me. Then someone from his team came the next day to check on me to make sure everything was good. So it was just like someone was always closing the loop and making sure that you were okay. And I really think that was a big part. Plus, and just naturally what my body did with just getting the baby out and not having any complications. That could not be maybe not said afterwards. So, it was bliss. Like, Blair, that's what I'm saying. Blair, like, latched on right after.
Yep.
Was nursing for, like, it felt like hours. He nursed for so long. Liam nursed for, like, 10 minutes after I delivered. Fell asleep, did not wake up for 24 hours. I'm not even kidding. He just passed out and just slept. The lactation consultant came by multiple times to try and get him to, like, wake up and, like, get him to latch. We had to, like, self-express some of the milk or colostrum, thank you, out of my breast and spoon feed him, kind of, because he was just too tired to even try to latch. It was insane.
Yeah.
And then
now he has no tiredness in his body at whatsoever.
I don't think his eyes opened for the first week, maybe for like a little second, and then it would close.
Yeah.
This child, on the other hand, our new child, his eyes were just wide open right after birth. Into when we went up or down, I forget, up to the recovery floor.
Just like always looking.
Yeah, just always looking.
Babies can't see that far, but just like
looking,
just concerned face.
Yeah, nursing. Just wanted to constantly nurse, and I knew he was sucking his thumb in the wound. So I think I was kind of mentally preparing myself for that. So it seemed great. Whatever. I had my own room. You had, I sent you home towards the end of the night, and he was fine. He was nursing throughout the night. I was barely getting any sleep. But anyways, I think it wasn't until the morning that I got maybe an hour or two of a stretch of sleep, because finally he stopped nursing. I was like, goodness gracious. Or I was just like, here's the damn pacifier. Like, mommy's nipples need a little bit of a break. So we did the, the circumcision that day. He had a few tests done. So if you get your son circumcised in the hospital, like, they pretty much knock out, and they're finally he was like sleeping. So that whole day, I think I barely nursed really much. He was just sleeping throughout the entire time. But I started to feel like, what's happening? My body then, I think, started to
postpartum switch went on.
Yeah, like, and it was just like, what the hell was happening? It was like the extra 3 weeks of being pregnant. And I think also my not so great of diet when I was pregnant. And then I decided to top that off right after I gave birth. What did I have you bring me?
Turkey and cheese.
Yes. And I had, some Doritos.
And then, and then the next day you had pizza or a chicken roll.
Yep, I had a chicken roll.
A pizza?
Maybe both. I had just every salty thing in the world I was eating. I wasn't eating that great. I just wanted to I don't know. I just was craving all this stuff.
You were avoiding sliced meat.
So I needed that.
You wanted. And then for pizza, it was just
chicken roll. I hadn't had those in forever. I lived off of those when I was pregnant with Liam, though. Yeah. So we hadn't had him in forever. So I was like, yeah, get me that.
And we were in the city, and so that pizza place.
So I think it was like towards the afternoon, I started to feel some like pain in my side. Like I went to go get dressed or something, or put on my nursing bra or something. I forget what it was. And it was like just this weird pain. And we never really, I think we concluded after I had the nurse come in a couple times that there was some residual gas that was in my body that was kind of traveling through my body. If you just think about just giving birth and being open wide, air comes in there and it needs to leave your body. And she's like, did you fart? Like, she's like, but like, these are legit questions. Like, did you fart? Did you release some of the gas? And I was like, you know what? Like, I don't think I have. So she gave me some Gas X, and towards the end of the day, I felt fine. I think I even farted a few times. Yeah. TMI, I know. But anyways, these are things that pay attention to, ladies. Like, after you give birth, like, did you fart? Like, what's happening? I think also too, I hadn't really. Well, that night they had to make sure I peed that night, because she was like, you have to pee or I have to put a catheter in you. Yeah. And so then finally I'm like drinking a ton of water, and I finally peed, which is also weird for me, because usually like when I gave birth with Liam, or even throughout my entire pregnancy, or even when I'm not pregnant, I drink a sip of something and I pee like immediately. And here I had drank so much and I hadn't peed yet. And they had a way to make sure that I wasn't hemorrhaging and check blood clots and all that other good stuff. So they needed that. So luckily that happened. So that was a little weird. That was the night of. Next day I'm having this pain on my side that was just like sent me. I had to sit down. I had to stop what I was doing. That's how much pain it was. But they checked my breathing, everything, nothing. The description of the pain wasn't anything that they're like, it just really just sounds like it's gas. So like, take this, see how it was. Before I left the hospital, I was fine and I was good. And then my doctor kept calling just to make sure and checking up on me. But then I think right before we were going to leave the hospital, and I wanted to make sure I nursed him before we left and got into the car, I'm in just excruciating pain while I'm trying to nurse him. And I'm just like, what is happening? My nipples are just, I hadn't ever experienced that with nursing with Liam. I was just like, what is going on? And I don't know if it was because the night that he was latching and stuff overnight, if I wasn't making sure he was latching properly. And so just a whole night, and he nursed a lot. If it was a couple of latches, bad latches, I don't think it would have been as bad. He was nursing the entire night. So I think the entire night of nursing and not making sure he latched correctly just did tremendous damage to my nipples. Like it was, when I got home and tried to latch him, my right nipple started to bleed. Like he had a little bit of blood in his mouth from latching, and like I had, like my nipples were like scabbed and cracked. I was like, what the hell? This is the next day. So just a whole day and night of bad latching just destroyed. Like I was in so much pain that I had to stop nursing for a few days to heal. So, and I think also with his constant nursing, I didn't have the milk to like pretty much lubricate your nipples. Just think about like you really chapped dry lips because you just have not put any chapstick or anything else on it, and it just keeps getting chapped and cracked more and more. That's essentially what was happening. I did not have my milk in yet to lubricate my nipples to make sure that it wasn't getting cracked, and then just the bad latch, because essentially the top of my nipple is hitting the hard palate, which is the roof of his mouth, essentially, and that's cracking, that's putting damage on your nipple. So anywho, so this was a completely different experience for me. Like before we went to the lactation consultant, because I was just like, is he nursing enough?
Right.
You know, I was just like, he's nursing for like 2 minutes and passing out. I was worried that like he wasn't getting enough. So we went there, had him wait, and she's like, you're fine. So you don't need to use this nipple shield. You're fine. He's latching perfectly. So that was with Liam. And now with Blair, it was a little bit of a tremendous difference where I now have this damage. I don't know what to do. Mentally, I'm, being crushed because of it, because you have this idea, especially if you had your first child, that you had not that bad of experience nursing, and then now you potentially need to stop nursing. In my head, I was like, it was only day 2. And I said, I cannot do this. That's how much pain I was in. I couldn't put a shirt on. I couldn't put when I put my bra on, it was like, that hurt. Brian went out the next day, and it's funny because the next day I started to get my milk. We gave the bottle. I was like, I'm fine. Mentally, I was like, if I need to give the bottle for a few days, I'm actually okay with that. I prepared myself for that. But it was the fact that I started thinking further out that I couldn't actually do this anymore because I was in so much pain. I couldn't even think far enough to being healed because I'm like, how the hell am I supposed to heal and still breastfeed? It's going to just be continuous damage.
Yeah.
And then the engorgement started.
Yep.
I knew that was coming. Add the engorgement. So your nipples are getting bigger, but they're cracked and dry. So it's even more painful. And now your boobs are so hard because they're filled up with milk. But like not a ton of milk is coming out. First the engorgement happens, and so then you have to get pumped to get some release. But then pumping is painful. It was just like a vicious cycle. So you're in pain pumping, but you need release because the engorgement is so bad. It's moving up to your armpits. So it's just like I can't even just touch a rock. That is how your that is how your breasts feel, and and it goes all the way up to your armpit. So sometimes it's a little painful to even like put your arms down a little bit. So I'm massaging. I'm getting in the shower. So
doing hot compresses
nonstop, getting in the shower, massaging it out as much as possible because pumping is just so painful. I had to get a size up from the flanks on my pump because my breast was so big and my nipples are big. I had to resize up. So I resized up. So that gave me a little bit of relief. So now I'm pumping. I got milk day 3, day 2, 2.5. I got my milk in. So I was pumping and we didn't have to give any more formula. And now I was just pumping and you were feeding, or I would feed him through the bottle. And I was like, I couldn't really think past all that pain. So I think you went out to the store and got me everything on the shelf. Brian pretty much
every size nipple shield you could find, or nipple flank.
Yeah, every size. You got me this thing so that I can put in my bra so that my nipples don't touch my shirt.
Yes. So everything to protect your nipple, to moisturize your nipple, to size up,
to pump it.
And
he had a whole bag of like
we were
goodies.
in line, and I'm like, oh, here we go.
So he shows up with all of this stuff. I'm like, what did these people think when you went to the store and just picked literally everything off the shelf? But it was helpful. But some of the things, even though it was helpful, I'm like, how can I do this? In my head, I just, for some reason, I couldn't get past that this is just temporary. And it might have been my sleep deprivation, my hormones going crazy. I couldn't get past the fact that this was not going to be the way it was. So it's temporary. I just need to heal. So anyway, so those few days were very rough. For me, I was like not in the greatest place at all. So then fast forward, I knew I needed to find a lactation consultant, and I knew what I needed to do, but I needed someone else who's a professional to kind of, make sure I was on the right path to be like, everything's going to be okay. So I got a lactation consultant. That was on that Wednesday. I came home on that Saturday. So it seemed like forever for those days to pass.
Yep.
I really felt like I had been doing that for like 2 or 3 weeks. And finally I was seeing someone. Nope. I was only in really excruciating pain like that from Saturday, Sunday, Monday, Tuesday. Tuesday started to give me a little bit of relief. Went 5 days I was in like unbearable pain, and I didn't know what to do. And I maybe had latched Blair a couple times when I was home, but I had to unlatch him because it was just too painful. So I'm like, okay, I'm going to this consultant to to see what I need to do. I was like, I'm gonna have to latch him. It's like, how am I gonna do this? And somehow she was just like this magical angel who somehow made it work and, showed me. She's like, he closes his mouth. I'm not going to get into all the detail, but he was closing his mouth so quickly that every time I was doing everything right, but he was closing too quickly. So he kept getting a shallow latch every single time. And then we also discovered that he had, what is it called?
It's tongue tie in the back.
Yeah.
A something. Whatever means in the back.
Why can't I think of a posterior tongue tie? So it wasn't very extreme where you can and it wasn't as obvious as the like one when it's right in the front where the baby cannot lift their tongue up. It's more in the back, so the mobility and their movement of the tongue they don't have full range. So
and it's really you're only diagnosing this pretty much via breastfeeding.
Yeah, because you're having
no other way to.
You're having complications. Yeah. Usually someone's not going to be digging into their mouth unless you went to a eyes, ear, and nose doctor for other issues, and they might have looked and saw that. So really this is really discovered because you have complications breastfeeding. And so what I was noticing, I was like, okay, it's not really painful right away, but then towards the end it's painful. So, her seeing this, she's like, it seems like he might have some restriction of his tongue because he would latch on perfectly and then he would go to a shallow latch. And I'm like, oh, it hurts so much. She's like, you got to break the latch when that happens. And so, but then he would get so upset. So I was like, oh, I can, once again, I'm going to thug it out. I can get this pain's going to be just fine. But no, I was just causing more and more damage. She's like, no, just unlatch him. He's going to get upset, but it's causing a lot of damage. So, she gave me a bunch of different tips. Luckily, she was at a facility where they had some doctors who were able to take a look into his mouth and see it. And they're like, it's not very extreme. They had this great, new procedure where it's not just like clipping it. I'm not sure if that's exactly what they do with the other tongue ties of just clipping it. But it was like this laser, which evaporates the cells
from the muscle.
Yeah, and literally like 30 seconds that it happens.
But 3 weeks of
recovery. But it is a much, I guess,
quicker.
Some recoveries are even worse than that. It's even longer than that. Yeah. So it's a much quicker recovery. At least like the initial wound recover, or the. I guess the worst of it recovers quicker, but you still need to do the exercises because it's still a little bit recovering. You still have that chance of, because apparently you get this done and then the tissue can just grow right back. So I was like, great. So once again, you're just so tired, you're in so much pain, and then you hear that you potentially have to put your kid into more pain. I was going back and forth with you and saying, I don't know if I want this done if the only benefit is for me to breastfeed. Like, I have to think outside myself. Like, yes, it's painful and upsetting that I'm not going to be able to do this, but I don't want that to be the only reason. But, the doctor explained it to us that there are other benefits and maybe things like, the people say that maybe it can recover on its own, but to not have full mobility of your tongue can cause other issues down the line. So she's like, some people like to wait and see. There was zero pressure. They didn't make me sign up for anything. She was like, here's information. It's like, these are the benefits. And it's like, she also put in perspective. She said, but you also need to be good too. So if like this is something you want to do and like it's not going to be super painful, it's really the comfort of you breastfeeding is going to be fine. So she's like, she was giving me all angles of it, but she's like, in the end, it's what you want to do. And there was like, I felt like there was no pressure. And then we also didn't do the procedure until like another week and a half. So it gave us more time to think about it. And I talked it through probably the day before we were going in for it. I was like, should we do it? Once again, I was like, should we do it? And I'm really glad, in the end, I'm really glad we did it. And specifically this way that we did it with the laser, with the facility, with the doctors that we did it with. She called me that night to check up on him and I couldn't answer. I think I was nursing or something. And then she texted me. The doctor texted me, like checking in, making sure everything's okay. She's like, text me back. I want to make sure you're fine. So I told her everything was good. And she's like, okay. And We scheduled how many check-ins, like 2 or 3 check-ins, where she checked his no additional charge, nothing like that. She wanted to make sure he was recovering good. They gave me a nice little flower orchid. I was like, what is this place right now? They are amazing. And that experience, like, it just made it. Plus our lactation consultant, she was amazing too. Like, just all the tips that she was giving me before we got the tongue tie thing done was super helpful. I was able to like regulate my supply much quicker than last time. It just, that dark 5 days got a lot brighter in like the coming weeks, just working with like the right people. And once again, being fortunate enough that my insurance covered to have those consultations was life changing.
Because not a lot of people have that luxury.
No.
But now that we're 7 weeks, 7 weeks later, how are we doing? How are you doing?
Well, you asked me this today. Today, I'm doing good. Last night I got 2 4-hour stretches from this child.
Yep.
Like, thank God to the snoo
2 nights
gods.
in a row. Right?
Two
last night too? Or
yeah,
the night before?
But the night before, so we have the snoo, we pulled that out. Like, I will tell you, getting the snoo and having the snoo right away it's been a game changer.
Yep.
Like, an absolute game changer. For whatever reason, he doesn't love to nap in the snoo, but I don't even care. Like,
he does like one nap in the snoo.
He does like one good stretch in the snoo for nap time, but like at night, something turns in. He just knows to sleep better at night, and I don't care. I'm like, you can sleep on me. You can sleep on this in the swing supervised
for a short period of time.
Yeah, just so everyone knows, because people are trolls sometimes. But yeah, so having that has been a game changer. But the night before, he did sleep the 2 4-hour stretches, but it rocks soothes the baby. And so I wake up with every little sound. He has learned he's the smartest little baby. I know. I said that about Liam, but like, this baby's a genius too. He knows now not to really cry.
No, because if you're consistently crying in the snoo jumps up to the next level to rock you a little faster.
Yeah,
I don't know what the right word is. A little more.
It rocks you fast, like I don't want to sound faster
like the baby
rocking.
is being shaken.
No, you use rock, which is good. It rocks the baby faster, and the white noise gets louder.
Yeah, and that's when you're consistently crying. But now this baby does a
yeah. He literally screams. Yeah, so that it doesn't immediately.
It does a short little.
Yes, it's very short, and sometimes it like he'll get a little bit longer, and then I'll jump it up. Yeah. But he's like, I don't want to. I don't actually like.
I want to get out. I don't want to be rocked.
Yeah, like I want to wake up. So, anyways, he did that the night before, and like I held off from getting him because before I was getting him, and I probably could have got these stretches a little bit sooner, but whatever. I would get him just because I didn't want to wake up Liam and blah blah blah. But now it's like, I think you're fine. So I would leave. I left him in there. And sure enough, like really short times, it would go back to being calm and he would be sleeping. So he did that a few times during his stretch time from the 4 hours he was in there. Last night, though, it was 4 hours.
4 hours.
With no...
To the dot. I think it said 3 hours and 59 minutes.
But the second one was 4 hours.
Exactly.
Second one was 4 hours, but it
got split by the day.
Yep.
so
right.
2 hours.
Yeah.
It cuts off at 7 a.m.
Yes.
So it splits
we can change that because we know that his sleep. I really do think his wake time. He is like a sleeper from.
He's like 10 to 10.
Yeah, he's like 9 or 10 to 9 or 10 in the morning.
Yeah.
So I think we should shift that because he does want to when he wakes up in the morning for his like 7 o'clock feed, he does want to go back to sleep. He's like too tired. Like I'm just burping him and he goes back to sleep. So I'm like, you want to go back to sleep until at least 9. So we should change that so that it shows up like that because it kind of splits the days for us. So that has made me like that is like the sweet spot. If he did this for the rest of the time, I want it to be longer for sure. We can get to 5 or 6 or even 8 hours. That'd be amazing. Just straight through. I'm good. Is a sweet spot. 2 hours or 3 hours, like it takes me forever to go back to sleep. Then I have to pee. Then I usually get a snack because I'm starving because you're consistently breastfeeding. So by the time he's sleeping, even though he sleeps in the bed for like 2 or 3 hours, I'm only sleeping for an hour and a half. So then once he gets up to the 4-hour range, then I start sleeping to the 2 to 3 hours. I'm actually sleeping, and that actually makes a difference for me. That hour sleep, it's just, oh my goodness, it's not enough. You're literally a zombie. So today I like to think of, like, when people ask me how I'm doing, I always say today I'm feeling good, because tomorrow this kid could be like, okay, mom, like go through another growth spurt or something like that, and I can be exhausted because I'm up all night. So today so far is a good day because I've gotten a little bit of sleep. Nursing is not painful anymore. It's it's the experience that I remember, right?
Yep.
Yeah. Although I rock Blair a little bit more than I rock Liam, because Liam would immediately go back to sleep, which you don't always want when you're nursing. You want them to stay up and you want them to nurse. But nursing was like I put a spell on you, and he would he would immediately go to sleep. Whereas sometimes with Blair, when it counts overnight, he does that. But sometimes during the day, like if I'm trying to like get him down for a nap, he's not always like, oh, I'm not gonna just pass right out. I'm gonna make you work for it, mom. And I'm gonna make you rock me and like sing to me and all that other good stuff. But honestly, I'll take it. You know, both of the experiences are great, and I'm really glad I'm able to do that. And who knows, in a month I could be like, okay, I'm done with this, or my body's not doing what it's supposed to do. But so far, it's been able to produce the amount of milk that it needs to produce. He seems to be fine and satisfied, and I'm having a much better experience doing it, which is also like a really, really big thing.
It's very important.
Yeah, today I'm doing good.
And then overall, life with 2 kids. It's just like, you know, when it hit me, we had 2 kids. I mean, obviously, walking into our house with Blair and having Liam meet Blair for the first time. But there was a night that when I put Liam down to bed, there was a night you were walking with Blair into our room, and I was walking with Liam into his room. And it was just like the 2 of us were putting kids down to sleep. And I'm like, whoa.
Yeah.
We have 2 kids.
That was like the night it's been a couple nights that they double teamed us. And I'm just like, why are both, like, there's not a single person in this house that's sleeping. Yeah. Like, none of us was getting any sleep. I was like, someone needs to go to sleep, like, right now. Or that, I think it was one time where I think Liam came into the room and you were trying to get me to sleep. And that was a couple of the nights where we were still we thought it would be wise that Brian would give a bottle to give me some rest in the middle of the night.
So I would do the first feeding.
But Blair was just waking up, like fully waking up.
Energized at the bottle.
Yeah.
I don't even know.
So
he
Brian was super tired. I was still super tired because Brian could go to sleep. I got the light on. I'm changing his diaper. Blair could be screaming. Brian will be sleeping. Or at least like he'll wake up and like 2 seconds later, his head is on that pillow and he is sleeping. He's knocked out. Me, on the other hand, like while he's giving me the quote unquote time to sleep and like I pumped and now I'm laying down and the light is still on and I hear the fussing and stuff. I'm not sleeping. I'm up until he at least turns the light off, or at least until Blair has fully settled down. So at that point, I'm like, you're not sleeping.
Yeah, because what we were doing is the first feeding would be 10 or 11. So, or no, maybe a little later, because I would get at least an hour of sleep because I immediately hit the pillow and go to sleep. Get an hour of sleep, wake up. By the time I put Blair down, I close my eyes for 15 minutes, and then Liam would come into our room because he wakes up in the middle of the night. So I would not be sleeping from 11 until 4.
It was crazy. Like, no one was getting sleep. Liam was still expecting you, but what were you doing? Until one day I had to like sit you down and tell you you couldn't do it.
I was listening to, I think it was episode 3 today of this current season, and we were talking about we were thinking about getting Liam his twin bed, and you're like, because I was going into his room. I used to go into his room and sleep on the ground while he was in his transitional crib to bed, and he would be great, and then he would start to like get out of his bed and like snuggle with me on the ground, and I'm like, this is weird. So we're like, we need to get a bed. And you were saying, I can't wait to get a bed so that you can just go fall asleep in Liam's bed and I have the big bed all to myself.
But yeah,
so I was laughing today listening to that episode because
that's exactly what happened.
Recently, you're like, you better not sleep in Liam's bed anymore.
I was just like, okay, because like, okay, that was happening. We didn't have
we gotta
kid.
replay. We didn't
have the kid at that time. But I think I also might have talked about in the later episodes how you're going to have to stop doing that, right? And I was like, you need to stop doing that. Or even if it wasn't during the episode and recorded, I sat you down. And then before we gave birth, and you were like, well, I'm going to get me some sleep. I remember you saying that. So I was like, fine. I have the bed to myself. You seem to be fine sleeping in that bed. Then a few days in with this happening, and I think Liam was waking up like almost like every single day. Sometimes it would be like sometimes like a couple times a week he would be up and you would do this. It started happening every day, and you had the baby with you, and I wasn't getting any help and I wasn't getting any sleep either. To the point where I was like, okay, it's gonna be rough, and a couple of times you're not gonna get sleep, but you cannot go into the bed with him anymore. And didn't it get better?
It did get better.
It got better because you started to be stern. You're like, his expectations was that you were not going to climb in the bed with him anymore. So
except
we started.
This morning.
Yeah, I mean that's different, right? it's like the morning time.
It's 4:30, and
it's 4:30, and it's just like I'm not trying. Yeah, that's different, right? And so it's like, okay, 4:30, Daddy's gonna come in the bed. It started to be like, no matter what time I got Daddy,
12 a.m. Yep. 11 p.m.
Yep. And sometimes he would be so afraid that you would leave the bed, he wouldn't even sleep.
Yeah.
So then now we have an exhausted toddler.
Yes.
2 exhausted parents. And the baby. And it just was a lot. And so I told you got to stop doing it. And it's going to be rough. Yeah. But it started to get better. And then I also took away the nighttime feedings from you. I was like, you know what?
That to the daytime.
I said, you are still getting up with Liam is still going to wake up at 6:30 no matter what, even if he hasn't slept through the night. So
6:40.
And I know, and I think Blair was only doing his big stretches in the morning. So I was like, I need that stretch from 7 to, he would sleep from like 7 to 10 or something like that. And I was like, okay, that would be the only time I would get sleep. So I said, I'm going to take the entire night of feedings with him. And I also, he can't be waking up in the middle of the night. And the bottle would sometimes give him a little bit more gas because he's drinking really, really fast. And it has like, it just inevitably has a faster flow. Anyways, it was really rough, guys. Like that was just if anyone was a fly on the wall or just peeking through the window, we were just.
It was like carnival.
Yes, it was interesting.
And there was one time when Blair wouldn't go back to sleep, and then as I'm rocking him at like 2 a.m. or jumping, Liam comes in the room, and I'm like, oh my God.
Yeah.
I was like, come on, Liam. So now I'm in Liam's room, putting Liam down, holding Blair, just so you could sleep.
Yeah.
But then, it's like 4 a.m. and I'm like, oh my God.
But then you weren't going to expect me to get up at 6. No. So you would still be getting up at 6 with him, and I'm sleeping in the room while Blair finally is doing his long stretch. So it was just like all very bad. And even then, that was still not enough time for me to feel any kind of rested. Yeah. So no one was getting sleep. Everyone was just running around. It took a minute
for us to get our routine.
Yeah, finally when I was just like, it was me being like, stop sleeping in the bed, and I'm taking the nighttime feedings. You don't feed him anymore. And I probably said it like that. I was probably really nasty about it. I was like, no more nighttime feedings. You don't get to do it anymore. I was like, it's just going to be me.
I will not confirm or deny.
sometimes you just need to be a little bit more stern. So anyways, I'm not going to sugarcoat it. I'm not nice. I'm not very nice when I'm through those times. And that's probably why I'm like, people don't come to visit, because I'm not going to be really nice. And I don't want to explode at someone when I know I probably should apologize a little bit more. I'm sorry. But I will definitely not apologize to the guests who decide to come by. And like, that's one of the things too, that I'm just like, just give me a minute. Like, immediate visits are like, unless we're cool like that and you're going to be fine and I'm not going to explode, that I'm going to explode with you and probably not apologize later, because really, I'm not going to apologize, then don't come by. And so my sister was really funny because she was there. She came around a lot when I was pregnant. She just kind of knew that I was going to be nasty in the beginning, or I shouldn't say nasty, that I was more sensitive. And so she would make fun of me about being
tired, your hormones were crashing. There were reasons.
You're really I forget what she used to say to me when I was pregnant, and I would tell her she would get that something would happen to her because she's talking bad about a pregnant woman. But it was all a joke. But it's true, though. You really don't have much of a filter when you're going through something like that. And you kind of have to have some people who are really, really close to you and in the trenches. And I didn't have a shirt on for most of the time for the first 2 to 3 weeks. So,
especially because your nipples were healing.
Yeah. So it was.
And then you were feeding on demand. So it was just like
it was
a perfect
lot.
Storm.
But I do have to backtrack to when I was pumping, when I had to pump a lot, and Liam comes into the room and he sees me pumping, and his little eyes got so wide. He was like, "What is happening?" He's like, "What are you doing, Mama?" And I was like, "I'm pumping out the milk." He sees the milk coming out into the bottles. I had to it was like a moment of comical relief, because I was just like, you poor child. I'm so sorry. Am I traumatizing you right now? But now it's been normalized. Like, it's actually not. Yeah. He sees it. He's like, "Mommy, breastfeeding Blair." Like, and sometimes, "Daddy, nipple?" And I was like, "No." I was like, he feeds Blair.
I was like, my milk has not come in yet.
He feeds Blair with the bottle. And then he remembered that he's like, "Oh, I used to have a bottle," and he knew the time.
Yeah, it's like when Nightly News with Lester Holt comes on.
That's when we gave him his bottle.
I have a bottle.
And he's like, Nightly News?
Because it was Nightly News was on the other night, or a couple weeks ago, and I think it just triggered a memory for him. He's like, "Oh, I used to have a bottle with Lester Holt and the Nightly News."
It's like, child, why do you remember that? But I was
he loves Lester. I don't.
Yeah, and it just was every time connected the dots with that. But we finally found our groove of I breastfeeding at this time. It's just it's easier. The baby goes back to sleep much quicker if I just do it at night. And now that it's it's not going to always be one-time wake-ups, but for now we'll take it to we'll fill you guys in if it goes back to 2 or 3 wake-ups, because I'm sure just being able to be flexible and remembering that. But what works right now with the stage that Blair is in is for me to wake up with him, Brian to keep getting your rest throughout the night, because you have to wake up at 6 o'clock in the morning with our little munchkin, because he's just never gonna let that go. As now we finally found a groove, and I think it's working a little bit more. And we need to remember that sometimes we're going to fall out of that groove. Yeah.
It's a strategy, and strategies have to evolve.
And I think I also even yelled at Brian the other day.
You don't have to.
I'm not apologizing for it, but
apologize.
But it's just the aha moments of when we're just okay, this is what needs to happen, and I'm looking at the time because I'm like, we have to get our child soon from school. But the aha moment of, figuring out what time we needed to start making dinner and stuff, and, I would sometimes have calls or FaceTimes, and you have calls or FaceTimes, to a point where I turned to you, I was like, we can't do that after 4, but if it gets past 4:30, we can't really be distracted. We have to be fully focused on the kids, because by the time you make dinner, shower, wash Liam, clean up all the toys that's on the floor. Me trying to because at the same time, seems like Blair wants to breastfeed, clean the kitchen, and have even an ounce. We try to have a little bit of us time by like from 8 to 10 in order for us to have some time to like binge our shows or even just have a conversation that's not around pretending we're talking to action figures. We need to make sure from 4:30 to 7 o'clock that we're fully focused on making sure everyone's doing what they're supposed to so that we can settle both kids down by that time. And so even just figuring out what that sweet spot is, and we're going to have to readjust when we go back to work and figure out what that looks like. But essentially it's like, okay, do I shift? And the days that I go into the office, do I say I still have to get a train at this time, or how do we make that work? We're going to have to figure that out. So it's a constant of rejiggering. For now, while we're both on maternity leave, we figured something out. For the most part, that works 85% of the time.
Yeah, that's fair. And for one of those days where we Blair went into the snoo for, I guess it's more like nighttime, and then Liam was down for like 35 minutes. Both kids were sleeping. And for 35 minutes, I forgot we had kids.
We turned to each other and we're like, whoa. Because before, and I'm sure Blair can still do it because he really is sleeping for a good amount of time from like 8:30-ish until 10. And sometimes he doesn't even wake up for a feeding, but if I really want him to sleep well, I want him to wake up for a feeding. Yeah. I could put him in the snoo, but he's such a small little nugget right now that like having that time where we're just watching TV and he's just laying on me, I'm like, I'm not going to get that time. I'm not going to get that back. Yeah. So I like that. And so we kind of do a hot potato passing him around. But I'm pretty sure we can probably put him in this, if we needed time where we wanted both of our hands to be free, we can put him down and he would sleep like probably a good 2 hours. And then we would want to either wake him for a nighttime feed before we lay down.
Yeah. But just for those 35 minutes, they're both sleeping. I forgot we had 2 kids until Blair woke up.
Yeah. We're like,
I'm like, oh my God, I forgot we have to get someone.
First couple of days when we were home, we did that where we put him in the snoo at the same time that Liam was down. I think because we were just both like zombies at that time, where it's just like, we've been holding you all the time and we're probably going to hold you throughout the night. And then now we've shifted where we'll watch our little shows, or, we've been binge watching a few shows while we hold him, and it's worked out for the last couple weeks, I guess.
Yeah. And I look forward to the next 6 or 7 weeks.
Yes.
And at that point, we'll do another check-in, and that'll pretty much wrap up our season.
Yeah, I will. And I think I'll be close to. Maybe we should do it after at least a day of me going into the office.
Oh, yeah. Okay, we'll do that.
Okay, let's see how like this works out. Yeah. And once again, because I think that's going to be the next major
So maybe we should have one when I go back to work.
Yeah.
In like a year.
Oh my goodness. And then you go back to work, and then, it's a lot. The next year will be constant shifts. And so if I can I hate giving parental advice, but once again, going through the experience of being pregnant, giving birth, having having the kid home with us, and then shifting and figuring out what works with you with breastfeeding, whatever. It's all about just being flexible and really throw all your expectations out the window and have a community of people. And sometimes like parents are great, like, and they add a different perspective or give you some advice. But get some people who are actually going through it real time, who has done it very recently, because things have shifted and the way you do things have shifted a lot. And so even just seeing stories or following certain accounts on Instagram has been very helpful, or sending a quick message to other moms who have given birth recently. It makes you feel less isolated because you're like, you're going through exactly what I'm going through right at the moment. And I think that, has been really helpful. So be flexible and create a community, whether it's virtually or because we have to do that a lot because of the pandemic. to do that. So I think Instagram it can be hard to watch sometimes because you see some of the ladies with their nice little robes and it seems like they're put together with their postpartum, right? And then you have the more raw accounts that really tell you about it. I more of like just like the little remember this, this, and this kind of checklist. I don't really follow the let's make our life beautiful through the postpartum, which, you want to make sure if that's a priority of yours, go right ahead. I like more of the raw stuff of like, look at me, I look like a hot mess because I'm wearing the same outfit I've wore for like the last few days because it works. It's my most comfy leggings and a button-down shirt, which who would have thought flannel shirt that I have because I'm constantly cold. Oh yeah. Because I'm always cold. It's a little bit of a softer flannel. Plus, I can easily do what is that? Skin to skin with the baby if I unbutton. So anyways, it works for me. But like that's what, I need more of a clean house more than like I need to be all put together and dolled up when I'm going through postpartum. But I think having that community and being flexible is probably the two things that I will give unsolicited advice to the new moms and new parents. It's just making sure that keeping that in mind. Be flexible. Like don't throw your expectations out the window, but then also make sure you're informed with as much information as possible so that you know what to expect, both health-wise with what's going on with you, what should you expect when breastfeeding your baby, and all the other stuff so that you're kind of a little bit informed and then go to the experts, right? So that like something is not right. Like my baby is not latching right. Okay, I need to get a lactation consultant. I'm not feeling that great. I need to go to a doctor or go to urgent care or whatever might be the case. So I think it's two very important things.
I love that.
Yeah.
I think it's a great place to end that episode. Thanks so much for listening today.
Let's go pick up Liam. Yeah. That's all for this episode, but make sure you're following the show so you know when the next episode is out.
Check out our website, liliesandloafers.com, for cooking and DIY inspiration and more updates from our growing family.
Millennial and Pregnant is a Lilies and Loafers original podcast. It's hosted by me, Fatima.
And me, Brian. Original music by Purple Planet. Thanks for listening. We'll see you soon.